And can you talk a little bit about the process that you go through in terms of getting to the asset allocation recommendations? Like, what is the process both from internalizing and then synthesizing the information that is out there? Because we know it's so much information, and then actually putting it in a financial directive.
Right. Okay. Well, again, good question. And, I would say, look, asset allocation is neither a new concept, it's a concept that's well discussed, and it's not magic. There's no magic, there's ways of approaching it. And I think, you mentioned all the information out there. I think the best asset allocation for any client, and I'm focused on wealth management, so I'm focused on particular clients. I'm not an asset manager. I don't have funds, and I'm not, looking at a pool of assets. So if I look at client needs, it has to start within and not without, right? So you don't begin with the world and the markets, and then you have to begin with the person, right? So the first questions are very basic things. It's understanding a person's kind of life plan and objectives. Where are you? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? Where are you today, right? So that's a starting point, and then within that, you look at the family structure, you look at the business structure, you look at the horizon that they have, and so on. Okay. Then from that, you start to get some sense of what assets might be available, what the purpose is behind those. And in order to do that, what I like to do is start with liquidity management, and I look at leverage a little bit. So what do you need to live? For some clients, it's nothing. It's, look, this portfolio is not something I live off. I just want to put it in a safe place. And so that gives you an idea of what liquidity you need. For other clients, they need to have income streams from that. So if you understand that, it helps you do two things. One, it helps you adjust what sort of yield and what sort of income generation you want to have. And secondly, it helps you understand how liquid or illiquid you might be able to go with the portfolio, what things you could invest in that have kind of a longer horizon where you're unlikely to have to sell out, because we want to avoid situations where people get overextended or over leveraged and then suddenly have a crisis because there wasn't enough forethought. So the first thing is liquidity. The second thing is, what is the purpose of the funds? And how hands-on does a client want to be? Some clients want to have a pool of assets to play with, to really be involved with, either in public or private markets, which is another part of the discussion. And some of it is really kind of so-called safe money. And again, where you invest that depends a little bit on what your horizon is, what your risk tolerance is, and to a certain extent, what the state of the world is. Right? So that is kind of the process you go through. And I don't need to tell the listeners here about, there's a 60-40 portfolio, which is a balanced portfolio, and you want to do that because bonds and equities are in principle meant to be not correlated and so on. I don't think that's the purpose of our podcast. I think people understand that. But in terms of your question, that is the process I like to go through so that whatever client I'm talking with really feels this is right for me, and you have to ask tough questions and you have to do the work, right? There's no shortcut to doing it. Banks and asset managers will have standard portfolios, and they're all kind of, from conservative to risky to high risk and so on. That's fine. But you have to begin with the client and then back into where they might fit in rather than start with that. Okay, so I think, and in that process, you learn a lot of things. And if you do it right, then you avoid surprises down the road. It doesn't mean the allocation will yield exactly what you want, just to be clear. It doesn't mean you sit and you agree the client needs 10% per year and you say, fine, and then it just delivers. But at least you will be in the right ballpark. And I think, this is very important because often, there's a regulatory reason to do this, right? So banks and other regulated asset managers have to do this because they have to demonstrate to the regulator they've gone through a process, they have the right forms filled in, and so on, so that they don't get sued, which does happen, for the investments the clients have made. And I would argue that that is a formal part of the process. but there is a softer part of the process where you really understand the needs and ensure that they get matched, and not to please the regulators, but to, in fact, address what the client really wants and really needs. And those two might be different things too.
Got it. Yeah, you basically you start with the client. You don't. There's no size fit alls. You fit all. You just
Right.
you need to understand the client, and then you tailor everything you do according to their needs.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So one of my clients, we had a particularly good year a couple of years ago, and things worked out very well. And he was really pleased, and he told somebody else who was a very high net worth person how happy he was. And that person asked if I could share with him the portfolio so he could, learn and potentially become a client. And I refused. And what I did was instead I said, that portfolio was created under particular circumstances for a particular person. I'm very happy to have a discussion with you and try to create the right portfolio for your needs. But simply sending you a copy of what I did for something else, as much as I would like to try to get, your business, I'd like to work with this particular person, I'm not going to do that because it's not correct. And that's where I think we need to be professionals. We need to basically stick to our principles that it is a personal thing and it does have to be done properly and it has to be focused on each individual client. And they're all very, very different.